Hello and welcome to our weekly IG Live. First off, I just want to do a little housekeeping note. We are sending our love to Misha Godfrey. She was scheduled to be our guest today, and we've had to reschedule until next week. She had a bit of a family emergency. I think everybody's okay, but it meant that she wasn't able to join us today, but she's going to be on next Thursday, same time, 3 p.m. Hello. And you don't want to miss it because Misha has such a unique perspective on the publishing industry, particularly on children, on diverse children's books. And so she really knows a lot about the state of the state of diverse children's books and what is out there and what the gaps still are. So you want to tune in for that next week. Hello. I know, I always do the same thing. I look in the mirror before I get on.
I know, and then you can see little things like this.
Yes. Yeah,
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to talk to you. I feel like it's been forever since we've gotten to talk.
It has, and I appreciate you. I was just talking about how we had to reschedule our guest for today, so I appreciate that you were available
and
able to jump on today.
That we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and I mean, so for those that don't know, we are going to be talking about empowering children's books to read for Black History Month. And of course, if you watch this, you know that we mean they're not just for Black History Month. We talk about Black children's books and other diverse books all year round, but Black History Month is a great time to kind of celebrate them. And I have books I want to talk about. I don't know if you have books that you would like to mention, or how would you like to do this?
I'll follow your lead. I feel like you're the host. I'm just on, like, remember on the TV show, there would be like the sidekick. I'm just the sidekick.
You're like,
yes,
man, or
Guillermo, yeah.
well, feel free. I first off, I want to mention Kayla. This is the latest in the series. I'm just going to briefly mention it because I thought we could come back and talk about it more in depth at the end since you are on it. But I want to mention this because this is such a wonderful, affirming book for kids to read. It works well as a standalone book. So if you haven't read any of the other ones, you could read this by itself. But I think you really get a lot more out of it if you read it as part of the series. It's the 5th book, and Kayla's all grown up. We start with her when she's very young. So I love it because you can really see the character evolved and the relationships evolve, especially the one with her and her mom, although also with her best friend who shows up in several books. Okay. So we'll come back to this one, but definitely get that. And I just want to mention, I know Dee Dee and I, we've talked about this before, that if you don't find this at your library, which was my situation also, of course, Dee Dee is also very generous with helping people get the books. But if you don't, another thing you can do for this or other indie authors who have a hard time getting into library collections is request it from your library. I did that with mine, and now they're just starting with the first book, but I'm hoping to follow up and get all the books, but they now have the first Kayla book in their collection. Or if it's one that you feel really, a book that you feel really passionate about, you can also donate it to the library. So wonderful. I just want to mention that because I just did that a few weeks ago. Which library is that? It. That's the Sacramento Public Library. So it should be that would mean it's available for all of the libraries in Sacramento County, which is wonderful. I don't remember how many there are, but it's a pretty big system. Yeah. And let's see. So I have a couple middle grade books I'm going to make sure we talk about, but I thought I have to mention this one. I don't know. Sorry, the reflection is really bad. This is You So Black. I've seen it, it's popped up on a lot of lists this year because it's such a great book, especially reaffirming for Black children to read. If you haven't seen the spoken word that it's based on, this is by Teresa the Songbird. If you just Google that, it will pop up. I did that pretty easily, and it popped right up in the search. And what she's done, it's so brilliant. She did a spoken word where she took a phrase that is often used as an insult, and she turns it around and makes it very affirming. So instead of being insulting, she does things like, and the illustrations in this, by the way, are just wonderful. She turns around and says, "You so black, when you smile, the stars come out." And then, let's see, black, I don't know, Can you see that? Black is pyramids and mathematics. Black is melanized and magic. So it's a really affirming book. And of course, we see some very famous Black people in there, like I'm sure that's Obama. Black and beautiful, Black and blessed, Black and so much more, Black and nothing less. And it goes on like this. It's a really great book. Even though it doesn't acknowledge Black is tough and Black is hard to do. Like I said, you usually, instead of listening to me read it, you should really go see the spoken word. But now they've made it into a children's book, which
what I really
I
love
really
about
recommend.
that is the use of the word Black so much.
Yeah.
In our culture, Black has been such a negative thing. You know, that like little kids will say to each other, "You so Black," and some insult comes after that. And I love that they use the word Black over and over and over again, which I know the name of the book is You So Black, but I love that they use the word Black and show all of the ways that it's powerful and positive. Even, you know, being tough is a powerful, positive word. So I've heard of that book, but I hadn't had a chance to see it. And the illustrations are beautiful too. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes, and the illustrator is London Ladd, which I hadn't seen any of his works before, but that is really wonderful. Another one, which is a really great affirming book, is Brown Baby Lullaby. This is Tamika Fryer Brown. She's had a lot of books come out recently, and some people might know 12 Dinging Doorbells was really popular in the holidays. She has a really great picture book biography of Shirley Chisholm that just came out. And her brand new book, which hasn't even come into, I've ordered it at the library and hasn't even come in yet, is called That Flag. And it's about the Confederate flag. So she's not afraid to take on controversial issues, and a lot of these she addresses things directly. This one is more of an indirect one, where it's just very affirming. It's a very sweet little family story of a mom and dad taking care of their sweet little brown baby. And it also mixes in a lot of Spanish, so probably Afro-Latino, and just all the ways that, you know, so we've talked before about it. It's great to have books that talk directly about struggle and about racism, because that's the reality we need to know about. But it's also so great to have books about Black joy and about just doing ordinary things. I think especially how Black families are often portrayed or not portrayed in the media. It's great to have these wonderful images of a happy, loving Black family. And it's also just a great kids' books. Like, I mean, it's a lullaby, so it is about a kid who's having trouble winding down at the end of the day. And it kind of, if you read it with your kid, it also, the pace of it changes, so it helps kids wind down. So
cool.
that's a really lovely book.
Oh,
and then Fly, which some of you may remember,
my hometown.
Is that how? Because I know
I'm from Louisville.
I didn't realize.
And she's from Louisville also, and she was at the Louisville Book Festival. We were so honored to have her. So cool to meet someone like her. Beautiful book.
It really is, and I was so impressed talking with her that I actually signed her up to to interview on our multicultural children's book too, Children's Book Day, because she was so great. And this is a really wonderful. I love the illustrations in this book too. And the whole story is about a little girl who wants to double dutch. She knows her grandma used to double dutch, but she never learned how, and she wants to enter a competition. Of course, her brother is like, "How are you going to enter if you don't even know how to double dutch?" And she said, well, she's just very confident. She's like, well, I'm going to learn. But she doesn't, she looks at books and she can't get it. And so,
gorgeous.
Yes. So beautiful. And she's very persistent and determined, but it's also a book about, and also just little details, like there's her doll, Black doll, that she asks for help from her friends. So even though they also don't know how to double dutch, but they kind of give her different skills that in the end all kind of accumulate in her learning how to double dutch and really kind of paying tribute to her grandmother in the competition. So that must have been really neat to get to meet her in person.
She's so kind and so smart. And we also got to meet several family members too, because they live here in Louisville. So it was just really an honor to be able to meet someone who I'm sure that book is going to go down in history as some of the greatest children's books ever written. So it was really neat to get to meet her.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really wonderful book. And like you said, she's just such an impressive person to talk to. Another one that's gotten a lot of buzz is Nigel and the Moon. And it's interesting. Misha can tell us more about this when she gets on next week. I know I interviewed her also for Multicultural Kid Blogs. And one of the things she's talked about, and we've talked about before, is when you do find books that feature Black children, it's usually girls more than boys. I'm not quite sure why. And that was something she had mentioned too. So this is another great one. Of course, you have wonderful books with Black boy protagonists. And this is another one, Nigel and the Moon. And this is a neat book that I think a lot of kids can relate to, that they have these big dreams like we talk about. And in Nigel's case, he tells the moon all the things that he wants to be. He wants to be an astronaut. Let me see if I can find the picture. He wants to be an astronaut, a dancer, a superhero, but he's really afraid to talk to anybody else about it. Although I think talking to the moon is kind of a good way to
Kayla books, Kayla talks to the moon.
I love that. I just think that's a neat way to think about it. There he is. Bless you. Dancing with the moon. But they're having career day at school, and he does not want to tell anybody. He keeps trying to kind of build himself up to tell his class about dreams, but it says, when the sun rises, he packs his dreams away again. So he's so sad. But the other thing that's happening in the book is that career day, people are talking about what their parents do. And one person said, my mom's a surgeon, my dad's a weatherman, someone else, my mother's the president of a big candy company. And he's nervous because his parents don't have fancy jobs. And he's a little worried that when they come in, he's going to be embarrassed. And of course, another example of a really loving family. I love that. Just in there, he's getting a little kiss from his, and love from both of his parents. And so what I love about this is that the parents, actually, when they come in, they show the way for Nigel to be proud of what he's doing, because the mom's a letter carrier, and she talks about how she helps connect people, and she delivers love through cards and postcards, and you really see her take pride in her work, and the dad take pride in his work as a truck driver, and the kids really respond to that because the parents are so proud. That I think the kids react to that, and then the dad says, "But raising Nigel is the best job we've ever had." Much like the Kayla
series, because the Kayla series, Kayla's mom says that the best job she's ever had is being Kayla's mom. We have like the same mind.
Yeah, this is just it is, because it's such a wonderful affirming message for kids to get, and then that builds him up so he can say, he says, I'd like to say something, and he stands in front of the class and tells them his dreams. So he gets that confidence from them. Yeah, it really is. So I hadn't thought about it until you mentioned it. It really is so much like the Kayla series. Two books I wanted to talk about that kind of go together. One is Crowned with Glory, and the other is Smart Sisters. They both have really gorgeous, so very different illustrations. This one is part of a Happy Hair series, and it's about sisters, but it's either biological sisters or friends that are like sisters because you're so close. And it's talking about that bond and supporting each other. But I just love the illustrations, and there's so much diversity. Wow. I mean, they're all Black and brown girls, but they have their own personal style, different skin tones, different textures, the hair. But just all so gorgeous, and just talking about how they support each other, and it just really like a lot about self-love and beauty, which ties into Crowned with Glory. And I should mention that I love the title because it's kind of a play on, you talk about your crown, which is your hair, but it's also has a religious undertone to it. So it's also in that sense that she's crowned with glory, because it's a really beautiful message about how you are made exactly how God meant you to be. And so it's really affirming about this little Black girl, and it's especially focused on hair, but also just in general about how she can be however she wants to be and how she has all this love and support from her family and whatever direction. And you even see, although there also is some talk about microaggression, about not letting people touch her hair, kind of respecting yourself. And so it's talking about the different things she can do in her community. There's even a glimpse of in there, she's learning to use her voice and even who she might be as she graduates and goes on and gets a job. But it's kind of neat how they weave in the idea about the hairstyles, you know, just about respecting herself. So she's like doing all these different styles at the same time. So it's like kind of a nice play on the different meanings of crown. Let's see. Another one is Show the World. And this one isn't specifically about Black children, although I would say that's most of the illustrations feature Black and brown children. But it's really neat because it's all about self-expression, and it's encouraging kids to find out what is your space. Maybe it's with music, maybe it's with cooking, maybe it's doing spoken words, maybe it's in the poses that you strike and you're dancing. And so it really talks, here's the cooking one, finding ways that you can express yourself and kind of find your voice and share your gift with the world, which I love because, I mean, one, talking about encouraging kids to be creative, but also that the way they're creative might be different than somebody else, which again is something you talk about in the Kayla series. Like Kayla and her best friend in some ways seem very different, and yet as this one says also, like however you want to express yourself is how you were meant to. Kind of like what you always say, like if you have a dream, you were given that dream for a reason and you should express it. So that one kind of talks about that, and also kind of helps kids think through, like, what are the different ways that they can express themselves. And sometimes, like if they like cooking, they might not have thought about that as a form of self-expression. You know, we tend to think of things like painting or singing, but it includes a lot of other examples that people might not connect with. Then I just had two more I want to talk about, which I loved. We usually talk about picture books, but these are two really great middle grade books that I ran across. One is Lotus Bloom.
I would love to read that book. I'm going to have to check that out. And
it is really good. I just finished it last night, stayed up late because I was like, oh, I have to find out what happens at the school board meeting. And also Unfadable. And they're kind of, they're somewhat similar. I mean, I think they work well to talk about together because they both have Black female protagonists, but they're fairly young. I think they're both about 12 or 13. And it's all about them learning how to find their voice and find their own path and to have the confidence to stand up for what they think is right. And they're both kind of reluctant activists. Lotus Bloom is a really talented musician, and she's just gotten into a magnet school, performing arts school. She's a violinist, but she kind of steps on some toes, not intentionally, but she comes in and she's so talented. She immediately gets a lot of attention, and she's made the concert master of the orchestra, and so stirs up a lot of jealousy. But how this comes out is there's some boys who really bully her, but it's very racial because they are making fun of her wonderful afro, and they throw paper airplanes, and they're posting videos of her and sending it to everyone. But what happens is, and at first she doesn't even say anything. She's kind of caught between, she has a best friend whose name is Rebel, very aptly named, who wants to protest everything and revolution. And that's not really Lotus's style. She just wants to keep her head down, do her music, not get in trouble. And so she's caught between her best friend and also her mom and her grandma, who are telling her, you don't want to throw away this chance you've been given. You're at this wonderful performing arts school. This is not an opportunity many kids from your neighborhood get. And actually, she's one of the only kids from her neighborhood to be at that school. And they're all kind of counting on her. So she feels that pressure, like she has to do well at the school, and she doesn't want to jeopardize that.
This is real life.
Yeah, well, and it's inspired by a lot of real life stories. Yeah, it is. It's because you really see her in this dilemma, and she's not getting great advice from the adults in her life. They want her to just keep her head down, and it gets to the point that she has to do something, because what happens is and so she doesn't even say anything about the boys bullying her. She kind of just pretends like it didn't happen and wants to move on. Her friend Rebel is telling her she needs to do something about it. Her mom says just ignore them. And she actually gets called into the principal's office because they say that she is violating dress code because of her hair. And they call it unkempt hair, and they say it's not fitting for the image for the school, even though she's like, you know, there are kids that have their heads like partially shaved and they have rainbow colors on their hair. How am I more distracting than that? And plus, she says, do you know how long it takes me to get to my hair this way? Natural hair takes so much time. How could you say I'm unkempt? So she is going to be to lose her place at the school unless she cuts her hair or puts it in a different hairstyle. And so it's all about her dilemma. So she's kind of forced to make a choice, where she was trying not to get it to take sides. So she's forced to make a choice. And one thing I love about both of these books, Lotus Bloom and Unfadable, is they talk about, that kind of shows a different side of activism. You know, we tend to think about people holding signs and going to protests. And this shows more about, you know, Lotus has to go to a school board meeting to address what's happening at the school because she becomes kind of the center of controversy about the dress code. And Unfadable, she has to deal with a community council. So this is, like I said, they're about the same age. Bella, who's the main character, this is 13, but and they both come from maybe kind of rough neighborhoods, but Bella's life is actually a lot tougher. She's homeless. Her mother has been hospitalized in a mental institution. Her father left them when she was young, and she kind of fell through the cracks of the system, and nobody has really tracked her, as far as nobody's taking care of her. And she's like one of those, she acts very tough, that she can take care of herself, and she's just kind of surviving on her own. But then, and so same as Lotus, she just wants to kind of do her own thing and stay out of the spotlight, especially because for her, getting in the spotlight is going to be getting a lot more attention from the institutions and maybe being put in foster care, which she doesn't want. So she has to decide what to do when she finds out there's a threat to her neighborhood, which, as I mentioned, is considered a rough neighborhood. And she also finds out that money that was meant to go to improve the neighborhood is being siphoned off for other things without the community's consent. And she also learns that land developers, they're going to divide up the neighborhood and have it developed, and a lot of the people are going to have to leave, even though they've lived there their whole lives. And so she has to decide, kind of like Lotus, she's forced to make a decision about getting involved. And like I said, in her case, it's going to city council meetings, but also she becomes kind of like a detective, because she's wondering, what is really going on here? I hear that we have all this money, and yet our neighborhood park is falling apart. What's going on? And she actually gets in kind of physical danger, because there are unofficially, some of the developers have contacts who kind of go and kind of strong arm people into agreeing to sell their land, and they kind of come after her, and she has to kind of hide from them because she is messing up their deal. So again, another really great book about finding your voice, and kind of like Lotus, learning how to do it in your own way. Like Lotus doesn't just want to do how her best friend wants to do it. She doesn't want to just keep her head down like her mom. In the same way, Bella has to figure out how to do it in her own way and to make a difference. So anyway, these are both really great middle grade books. If you have people that are ready for
I got to hear about both of those books, because I guess I'm more in the picture book world, so I do see a lot of picture books come up on Instagram and other lives and things like that I watch. But I'm not as familiar with the middle grade diverse books world, and those sound like two really, I mean, I love reading picture books and middle grade books and YA books myself, even though I'm an adult, and I know I'm not alone in that. I know a lot of adults do, but man, those both sound like really interesting.
They are, and I feel really lucky, because I hadn't heard of these authors before. I was just in excuse me, to their biographies to see if they'd done any books I'd heard of. I hadn't heard of them. It honestly was just lucky finding them through a library search because I did want to include some books for older kids. I'm like you, I'm more in the picture book world. Sometimes because I think they work better on Instagram because they have these beautiful pictures. Excuse me. But and I also thought it was funny that they were so similar. Excuse me.
Okay.
I think I need to go get a drink. I haven't had that happen.
Okay. All right.
Here, I'll just get some water.
Right. It's okay. I'll say hi to the folks that have joined us recently too. Carly, I'm not sure if Carly's still on, and Nabby maybe, and also Chrissy. Thank you so much for joining us. We were supposed to have another guest on today, but she had a family emergency come up, which is totally understandable. So if you're on to see that guest, she will be on next week. And Leanna and I were just catching up in honor of Black History Month. Like Leanna said at the beginning, we spend the whole year talking about books with Black and brown characters and lots of other marginalized voices and characters as well. But Make Way Media specializes in books with Black and brown characters. So it's really nice to take Black History Month to even, celebrate what we do all year long in honor of Black History Month. So it's been a really cool conversation today, and I have a list of books now that I have to go get after.
Well, if you want to see the full list, I think there were one or two that actually I didn't get to. I don't have physical copies of right now, but you can see the whole list if you go to All Done Monkey and the link in my bio. You can see there and get links to all the books, which includes, I don't know if you want to, it's been about a half an hour.
No,
I don't know if you want to just briefly come back to this and talk about it because it is
10 or 15 minutes. I just like that to be a goal because I don't think a lot of people are going to sit and watch IG Lives for 30 minutes. But today has been, to me, like really a special message. So I think we're okay. We might cut off in 30 minutes, though. So you might want to hurry up and throw in my book.
Well, let me just say really quickly, or if you want to give an introduction to it, that again, like I said, Kayla is all grown up in this book and just so gorgeous as always. The really wonderful illustrations by Charlene Mosley, and you kind of see how she's just she and her best friend are in college. And they're talking about their dreams and how a lot of people try to talk them out of their dreams or tear them down. And Tommy, who's her best friend, is talking about how she doesn't look like how a girl is supposed to look, and she wants to play football, but she just faces a lot of backlash. And Kayla has faced the same thing in her dream to become a dancer and to be on Broadway. And Kayla makes the really wonderful connection about talking about her grandmother, who is the first Black girl to go to her high school. So I love that it makes that connection to the earlier struggle in the civil rights movement and how, in a way, they're kind of continuing that same like determination and trailblazing as in the earlier one. But then the rest of the book is all about the mom and Kayla. And it's so funny to me because one of the things I love about this book is that you can see that the mom isn't perfect. She's really wonderful and she has such a great relationship with Kayla, but sometimes they kind of miss each other, but they always come back and find each other because they have so much love for each other. So Kayla has big news and the mom immediately thinks, oh, she's getting married. And then there's a lot of kind of examination. Well, why did she think married, and why is that something that she has a goal for her daughter, and maybe her daughter is not even thinking about that?
She's such an independent woman, why would that be her first thought that would come to her mind?
Which I think is so realistic. A lot of us, we have these thoughts for ourselves, but when it comes to our kids, we want them to be taken care of. In some ways, we're like more traditional with them because we just want them to be safe. And I thought that was such a neat thing to explore in the book. And then, let's see, when she comes, one of the other things is, of course, since you are a therapist, that I think is so great in these books is it really weaves it in very naturally about different kind of mental health things that people can do. And if you read that, that always comes through in the earlier books. And this one, it talks about the treasures that the mom has given to Kayla over the years. And they really spend time reconnecting by going through those. Let me see the page where it kind of shows them all the different aspects. And it's also neat because this is the last book in the series. It kind of just reminds us about the journey that we've been on with Kayla by looking at these different objects that she's held on to. And it says each treasure had a special memory and each represented a special milestone in her life, which of course we've gotten to experience with her. And now this is the culmination. And there's some images that came up in the earlier series and really kind of connects them all together, and that it's really culminating in her going off to Broadway, which is the big news that she has. Sorry if that's a spoiler, but I'll go ahead and do it. And then that's that gorgeous image, which we also see echoed on the cover. So yes, it is just such a beautiful book. And like I said, you could read this one alone, but I think it really has a lot more meaning if you read the whole series, because you really feel like you've gone on a journey with Kayla and with her mother, and you see how the characters develop, but also how their relationship develops. And as a mom, that's something I'm thinking about a lot more as my kids get older, like how my relationship changes, and kind of like we were talking about how you want to keep protecting them, but how do you find that balance and let them go off and do their own thing and follow their own dreams, and how do you be supportive of that? So that was something that I think I was really focused on in reading.
Well, I have to go look for
reading
your
this one
review.
especially.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, I love the Kayla series. I mean, I know I always feel so silly when I say that because I did write the Kayla series, but when I hear people talk about it, it just reminds me, it gives me goosebumps because it just reminds me of all the messages I was hoping that children and families would get from the series.
Mm-hmm. It does. I mean, that must be nice. Like, like, oh, what I wanted them to get out of it is what they're getting. And I just recently reread the series with my daughter. We had been reading it kind of, we had read it before, but now that we have the 5th book, we read them all again. And she just always
that.
them at bedtime.
Speaking of bedtime, I love the Kayla series because I feel like it leaves you hopeful when you put it down at night instead of kind of like, I know we have these fairy tales, and I'm not knocking fairy tales because I love Jack and the Beanstalk and Little Red Riding Hood and Goldilocks and the Three Bears and the Three Little Pigs and all of that. I love all of those, but it is not really like a bedtime story because it's not comforting or calming or I want my children to go to bed at night and be hopeful about the next day, not be fearful or but they're good stories. I just don't know that they're bedtime stories. So that's why I like the Kayla series, because I think they actually make good bedtime stories too.
I agree. I think that, like you said, it's something very positive and kind of affirming. And you can also, think about kids going off to sleep and dreaming about their big dreams. It's such a nice way to go to sleep.
Well, thank you for sharing all of these books with us today. I think this was a great way to spend today.
I enjoyed it. I love getting to, it's really fresh in my mind because I just published that book list, and they're all such great books. I enjoy getting to share them with you. And
Thanks
thank you
for
being
inviting
on
me
here
today.
with me.
I loved hearing about all the books. I am going to go look at the link in your bio from the All Done Monkey website and check out all of these books.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you here next week. Bye.